Have you ever felt truly alone? Not just by yourself, but a deep, aching solitude that whispers secrets only you can hear? That feeling, a heavy cloak woven from silence and unseen tears, settled deep within Sarah's bones when she moved to the sprawling, impersonal city of Boston. A new job, a fresh start, everyone said. But what they didn't mention was the profound, isolating quiet that could consume you, even amidst millions of strangers. She longed for connection, for that familiar comfort of family, but her own was miles away, living their own lives, their calls brief, their presence fleeting. Each night, the city lights outside her window felt less like a beacon and more like a constellation of unreachable stars. She was an island, drifting in an ocean. Of faces she didn't know Dot, and then there was Arthur, an old man, grizzled and gruff, living just 2 floors below her. Their interactions, if you could even call them that, were strictly transactional. A shared, exasperated sigh over a slow elevator, a terse nod in the mailroom. He was everything she wasn't, loud, opinionated, seemingly content in his solitary world. They were 2 separate planets, orbiting the same building, destined never to collide. Or so it seemed. What if I told you that sometimes the family you desperately crave isn't found in your past or in shared blood, but in the most unlikely of places? What if the person least likely to understand you becomes your greatest confidant? This is a story about the intricate, beautiful dance of human connection. It's about 2 souls, adrift in their own quiet universes, who are pushed together by a series of mundane moments, tiny inconveniences that, against all odds, began to weave a tapestry of love stronger than any they had ever known. A bond so profound, it transcended generations, defied expectations, and transformed complete strangers into the truest form of family. You won't believe the journey they took and the unexpected warmth they found. Stay with us, because this is a heartfelt chronicle about how real family isn't born. It's built. Sarah had moved to Boston with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Fresh out of college, she'd landed a promising job in marketing, her first step into the adult world, away from the familiar comfort of her small hometown in Ohio. She imagined bustling city life, new friends, vibrant experiences, but reality, as it often does, had a way of dimming the brightest colors. The job was demanding, her colleagues friendly but distant, and making new friends in a city where everyone seemed to have their own established circles felt like trying to catch smoke. Her apartment, a compact 1-bedroom on the 5th floor of an older building, became her sanctuary and her cage. She'd spend evenings scrolling through social media, seeing her old friends' laughter-filled photos, a pang of loneliness twisting in her gut. She missed family dinners, the easy banter with her cousins, her grandmother's comforting presence. The phone calls with her parents felt increasingly strained, filled with polite inquiries about work and fleeting mentions of their own busy lives. She was loved, she knew, but she felt untethered, a boat without an anchor. And then there was the noise. Not the general city hum she'd grown accustomed to, but a very specific, very loud, very old-fashioned noise. The blare of a television, set from the apartment directly below hers. Arthur Vance, as the mailbox stated. He seemed to watch every evening news channel, every sports game, every dramatic documentary, with the volume cranked to an almost unbelievable level. It vibrated through her floor, a persistent thrum that infiltrated her quiet evenings, a jarring reminder that she wasn't truly alone, just alone with someone else's incredibly loud television. Their first real interaction wasn't friendly. It was born of exasperation. One Tuesday evening, after a particularly draining day at work, Sarah finally snapped. The bass from Arthur's TV was making her teapot rattle. She marched downstairs, heart pounding, determined to politely but firmly ask him to lower the volume. She knocked, tentatively at first, then a little louder. The TV's roar swallowed her knocks. She knocked again, harder. Finally, the door creaked open. An elderly man, his white hair a disheveled cloud, stood in the doorway. His eyes, magnified by thick glasses, were narrowed. He wore a stained flannel shirt and suspenders. He looked exactly like the grumpy old man from every stereotype, and Sarah's confidence wavered. "Yes?" He grumbled, his voice rough, surprisingly deep. "Hi," Sarah began, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm Sarah. I live upstairs. 5B. I was just wondering. Your television? It's quite loud. I can hear it in my apartment, and it makes it a little hard to concentrate." Arthur blinked, then slowly, a corner of his mouth twitched downward. "Loud, is it? Well, my hearing isn't what it used to be. Old age, you know." His tone was dismissive, almost challenging. Sarah felt her cheeks flush. "I understand that, but it's really quite disruptive, especially in the evenings." He folded his arms across his chest. "I suppose I could turn it down. Never had complaints before. Been living here 30 years. He paused, letting that sink in. New folks always got something to complain about. Sarah clenched her jaw. This wasn't going as planned. "I'm not complaining, Mr. Vance. I'm just asking for a little consideration," he scoffed. "Consideration? Right, fine. I'll turn it down." He turned abruptly, and the door began to close. Before it shut completely, Sarah heard the TV volume drop, significantly this time. She stood there for a moment, a mix of triumph and residual irritation bubbling inside her. This was not the friendly neighborly welcome she'd imagined. That initial confrontation set the tone for their early interactions. Stiff, reluctant acknowledgments in the hallway, hurried escapes from the elevator if the other was approaching. Sarah still heard the TV, but it was less intrusive now, a constant reminder of the grumpy old man below. She figured that was as good as it was going to get. Then came the incident with the groceries. It was a Saturday morning. Sarah had just returned from a massive grocery run, her arms laden with several overflowing bags. As she fumbled with her keys at her apartment door, one of the flimsy plastic bags gave way. Oranges, a carton of milk, and a jar of pickles tumbled out, scattering across the carpeted hallway. She let out a frustrated groan. "Well, aren't you clumsy?" A gruff voice remarked. Sarah looked up to see Arthur standing at his open doorway, holding his newspaper, a half-eaten bagel in his other hand. He wasn't smiling. "Oh, very helpful, Mr. Vance," Sarah muttered, bending down to retrieve an orange that had rolled dangerously close to his apartment. Instead of disappearing back inside, Arthur sighed dramatically, then, to Sarah's surprise, he put down his newspaper and bagel. He knelt down slowly, with a series of creaks and groans, but he knelt. He began to gather the fallen items. His movements were slow, methodical. He carefully picked up each orange, each apple, handling them with an almost surprising gentleness. "You know, these new bags are rubbish," he said, not looking at her. "Back in my day, they used proper paper bags, sturdy. None of this flimsy plastic nonsense." Sarah paused, a small smile touching her lips. "I agree. It's impossible to carry anything." He grunted in response, handing her the jar of pickles. "You got a spare bag in there?" Sarah shook her head. "No, I used them all." Arthur sighed again, a long drawn-out sound that somehow conveyed both exasperation and a strange kind of resignation. "All right, hold on." He disappeared into his apartment for a moment, and Sarah heard a muffled rummaging sound. He reappeared with a worn, reusable canvas tote bag, one of those heavy-duty ones. "Here, put it in this. Never leave home without one. You learn these things when you get to my age." Sarah took the bag, genuinely surprised. "Oh, Thank you, Mr. Vance. Really, that's very kind. He waved a dismissive hand. Nonsense. Just practical. Don't want your pickles rolling down the hall again, do we? He stood up with another groan, then picked up his newspaper and bagel. Well, good luck with all that. And with that, he retreated into his apartment, closing the door behind. Sarah stood there for a moment, the heavy canvas bag in her hand. It was the longest conversation they'd ever had, and he'd actually helped her. He was still grumpy, yes, but there was a flicker of something else. A gruff helpfulness. It was unexpected. She unpacked her groceries, and later that day, she hung the canvas tote on her doorknob with a small handwritten note. Thanks again for the bag. Sarah, 5B. The next morning, the bag was gone. The grocery incident seemed to break a tiny barrier. Their interaction slowly, almost imperceptibly, shifted. It wasn't a dramatic change, no sudden declarations of friendship. It was in the small things. Sarah started seeing Arthur more often. He had a peculiar habit of getting his mail precisely at 3 p.m. Sarah, often returning from work around that time, would sometimes find him struggling with the heavy lobby door or fumbling with his keys. She started, almost without thinking, to hold the door for him or offer a quick hand with a package. He would always give a curt nod, sometimes a mumbled thanks, but never more. Yet she felt a tiny satisfaction in these small, unspoken acts, and Arthur, in his own gruff way, began to reciprocate. One bitterly cold Boston morning, Sarah was wrestling with a stubborn snow-covered car, her fingers numb. She heard a familiar grumble behind her. "You're doing it all wrong, girl." Arthur's voice cut through the biting wind. He was standing by his own car, already cleared of snow. He had an extra, smaller snow brush in his hand. "Here, use this. You'll be out here all day with that little scraper." He tossed the brush to her. Sarah caught it, surprised. "Oh, thanks, Mr. Vance." He merely grunted, then added, "And don't leave your wipers up like that. They'll freeze to the windshield. Always lay them flat." He didn't wait for a reply, just shuffled back to his building. Sarah used the brush, and sure enough, it made the job infinitely easier. She smiled. He wasn't so bad after all, just direct. These small, almost accidental moments became a quiet routine. A nod in the elevator evolved into a brief comment about the weather. A shared sigh over a broken washing machine in the laundry room led to a murmured shared complaint about the landlord. They were still strangers in many ways, but the rough edges of their initial encounter were slowly wearing smooth, replaced by a thin, almost invisible thread of shared existence. One rainy evening, Sarah found herself locked out of her apartment. She'd rushed out to grab something from her car, and the door had clicked shut behind her. Her phone was inside. Her spare key, as always, was with her roommate who was out of town. Frustration bubbled. She leaned against her door, exasperated. When Arthur's door opened, he looked at her, his eyebrow raised. "Problem, 5B?" Sarah sighed. "Yeah, locked myself out. And my roommate's gone." Arthur grumbled. "Happens to the best of us. Happened to me twice last year. Landlord's number on the building notice board. He's usually quick." "I know, but my phone's inside," Sarah said, feeling defeated. Arthur stared at her for a long moment, his gaze unblinking. Then, without a word, he turned and went back inside. Sarah braced herself for disappointment. But moments later, he reappeared, holding an old-fashioned rotary phone. "Here," he said, extending it. "Dial from here. Don't stand around in the hall like a drowned rat." Sarah took the phone, surprised yet again. "Oh, wow. Thank you, Mr. Vance. You're a lifesaver." He merely waved her off. "Just call the landlord. My dinner's Getting cold. He left his door ajar, signaling she could use it as long as she needed. Sarah made the call, her heart warmed by this unexpected gesture. She was no longer just a loud TV's neighbor. She was someone he would grudgingly help. The real turning point, however, came unexpectedly on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Sarah was in the laundry room, folding her clothes, when Arthur shuffled in, carrying a small, worn laundry bag. He looked particularly disheveled. His shoulders slumped. He usually avoided conversation. He sighed heavily as he loaded his clothes into a machine. Another damn shirt with a missing button, he muttered to himself, but loud enough for Sarah to hear. Sarah, feeling unusually bold, looked up. "I can sew a button on, Mr. Vance, if you like." He stopped mid-load and turned to her, his eyes widening slightly. "You can?" She nodded. "Yeah, my grandma taught me. Used to sew up all my brother's ripped jeans." He hesitated, then slowly pulled out a faded blue shirt from his pile. "This one. I swear I lose a button every week. My wife. She was good at these things." His voice trailed off, a hint of wistfulness in it. Sarah felt a pang of empathy. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Arthur looked at the shirt, then at her. "She's been gone. Going on 5 years now. You forget how much you rely on someone for the little things. Or the big ones, for that matter." It was the first time he'd ever mentioned anything personal. Sarah felt the air shift, a fragile moment of shared vulnerability. "I know what you mean," she replied, surprising herself with her honesty. "My grandmother passed away last year. We were really close. It's hard when they're not around for the little things, or the big ones." Arthur looked at her, and for the first time, his gaze wasn't gruff or dismissive. It was understanding. "Ah, Grandma. Best people on earth, grandmas." He actually offered a small, sad smile. "So, you're far from home, too." Sarah nodded. "Ohio. My whole family's there. Mine, too, originally. Upstate New York. But Boston. Boston became home. For her." He gestured vaguely around the building. "And for me, I suppose." Sarah took the shirt. "I'll fix it for you. Just leave it on my door when it's dry." When she returned the shirt a few hours later, impeccably mended, she found a small, neatly folded $20 bill tucked into the pocket. She went downstairs and knocked on Arthur's door. He opened it, looking surprised. "What is it?" She held out the 20. "Mr. Vance, I can't take this. It was just a button." He waved his hand. "Nonsense. A service rendered. Take it. Consider it payment." "No, really." "It was nothing. Just happy to help." He narrowed his eyes. "You refusing a gift?" Sarah sighed, then chuckled. "No, I'm just... I appreciate it, but really, it's not necessary." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. All right. Stubborn, aren't you? Just like her. Tell you what. I've got too many of these fancy cookies my sister sent me. You take half. That's your payment." He disappeared again and returned with a large tin of gourmet shortbread. "Cookies." Sarah laughed, a genuine, warm laugh. "Deal, Mr. Vance." She took the cookies. "Thank you. These look amazing." "They are," he grumbled, but his eyes twinkled. "Don't eat them all at once. Too much sugar." He then closed the door, leaving Sarah standing in the hallway, holding a tin of cookies and a feeling she hadn't felt in a long time. Warmth. From that day on, the walls between them began to truly crumble. It wasn't a sudden flood, but a steady trickle, forming a stream of shared moments that slowly carved out a new path. Arthur stopped turning his TV down completely. Instead, he started inviting Sarah over for the news. "Come on down 5B. They're talking about those new potholes on Main Street. your street too. Sarah would go, hesitantly at first, then with increasing frequency. She'd sit on his old comfortable armchair, sipping weak tea he'd brew for her, listening to his running commentary on current events. He'd complain about politicians, the youth, the price of everything, and she'd sometimes offer her own perspective, or just listen, soaking in the comfort of a shared presence. She learned about his late wife, Eleanor, a quiet woman he adored. He'd show Sarah old photo albums, his eyes softening as he pointed out Eleanor's garden, their travels, the life they built. Sarah, in turn, found herself confiding in Arthur about her loneliness, her struggles with the new job, her homesickness. He didn't offer platitudes or empty advice. He just listened, sometimes grunting in understanding, sometimes offering a single profound sentence that cut straight to the heart of her worry. "Missing your people, eh?" He'd say, watching her closely. "That's natural. Don't fight. Just find new ones. They're out there, if you keep your eyes open. And your heart, too." They started having Sunday dinners. Arthur, a surprisingly good cook when he bothered, would make a simple roast or a hearty stew. Sarah would bring a salad or a dessert from a local bakery. They'd sit at his small, cluttered dining table, sharing stories. She told him about her crazy college escapades. He recounted his days working as an engineer, building bridges that still stood today. She even taught him how to video call his sister, who lived in Florida, bridging a gap he hadn't even realized existed. Arthur, initially resistant to technology, now looked forward to his weekly video chats. Arthur, in turn, became her rock. When Sarah had a tough day at work, she'd find a freshly baked loaf of bread from a local bakery sitting on her doorknob. No note, just the bread. When she got the flu, he was the one who brought her chicken soup and checked on her every few hours, grumbling about how youngsters never take care of themselves. He helped her fix a leaky faucet, showed her how to properly hang a picture, and even patiently explained the intricacies of filing taxes, things her own busy parents might not have had the time for. He became the grumpy, wise grandfather she didn't realize she was missing, and she became the vibrant, attentive granddaughter he hadn't known he needed. They talked about everything and nothing, from the mundane to the profound. The age gap, once a chasm, simply ceased to exist. They were Arthur and Sarah, and they were family. Their unexpected bond had blossomed beautifully, quietly, over the span of a year. Sarah's life was richer, fuller. The city no longer felt impersonal. It held Arthur, a beacon of warmth. But life, as it always does, had a way of testing the most precious connections. It started subtly. Arthur missed their Sunday dinner. Sarah, initially annoyed, then worried, knocked on his door. No answer. She tried again, louder, silence. A knot of fear began to tighten in her stomach. Arthur was never late for dinner. He was never silent. She called his sister in Florida. No answer. There either. Panic began to set in. Sarah quickly called the building manager. After what felt like an eternity, the manager arrived and used his master key. The sight that greeted them sent a cold wave of dread through Sarah. Arthur was on the floor in his living room, slumped against his armchair, unconscious. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. An empty pill bottle lay beside him. "Call an ambulance." Sarah screamed, her voice trembling. The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights, frantic questions, and the chilling wail of sirens. Arthur was rushed to the hospital. Sarah, despite being just his neighbor, insisted on going with him. She sat in the sterile waiting room, the fluorescent lights humming, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She called his sister again, finally getting through, her voice choked with tears as she explained what had happened. Hours later, a doctor finally emerged. Arthur had suffered a severe stroke. He was in critical condition. The doctor spoke of a long recovery, if he recovered at all, and the likelihood of permanent damage. Sarah felt her world tilt. The thought of losing Arthur, this man who had become her anchor, was unbearable. His sister Margaret arrived the next morning, a whirlwind of worry and exhaustion. She was a kind woman, but distant, worn down by years of being the primary caregiver from afar. When she saw Sarah, her eyes were filled with confusion. "You're Sarah?" Margaret asked, her brow furrowed. "Arthur mentioned you." The girl from upstairs. "Yes," Sarah said, her voice hoarse. I found him. I've been here all night." Margaret looked at her, surprised. "All night? But why? You're not family." Sarah's eyes burned. "He is family," she said, her voice firm, resolute. "He's my family." Margaret stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a faint, understanding smile touched her lips. "I see," she whispered. "Thank you, Sarah. Truly, thank you for being here." The following weeks were a grueling test of Sarah's love and commitment. Arthur remained unconscious for days, then slowly, painfully, began to regain consciousness. Sarah was there every day, juggling her job, making sure he was comfortable, talking to nurses, bringing him small comforts. Margaret, overwhelmed by the medical decisions and her own life, leaned heavily on Sarah. They became a silent team, united by their love for Arthur. Sarah would read to him, even when he couldn't respond, just talking, reminding him of their shared jokes, their quiet moments. She refused to let him be alone. One afternoon, Arthur's eyes fluttered open. He looked at Sarah, truly looked at her, and a faint flicker of recognition crossed his face. He tried to speak, but only a garbled sound emerged. Sarah leaned in close. "It's okay, Arthur," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here. We're all here." He blinked slowly, and then, with immense effort, his hand, frail and weak, reached out. Sarah took it, holding it tight. In that moment, the sterile hospital room faded away. There was only the warmth of their hands, the silent understanding that transcended words. He wasn't just a patient, and she wasn't just a neighbor. They were family. Arthur's recovery was long and arduous. He had to relearn simple tasks, his once gruff voice now a quiet rasp. But Sarah was there, every step of the way. She helped him with his physical therapy exercises, celebrated every small victory, and patiently listened as he struggled to form words. Margaret, deeply grateful, watched their bond grow with a quiet admiration. When Arthur was finally discharged from the hospital, it was Sarah, not a hired caregiver, who brought him home. She had rearranged her apartment, making it more accessible, and had spent countless hours researching home care options, just in case. But Arthur didn't want a caregiver. He wanted Sarah. "You're not going anywhere, 5B, he rasped, when she suggested finding someone to help during the day. "You're staying right here. Your family." His eyes, though still tired, held a fierce determination. Sarah's heart swelled. "Yes, Arthur," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm staying right here. We're family." And so their lives merged. Sarah helped Arthur with his daily needs, managed his medications, and made sure he ate well. In return, Arthur, even with his limited mobility, continued to offer his gruff wisdom, his quiet presence, and the unwavering love only a family member can give. He'd sit in his armchair, watching Sarah work on her laptop, occasionally offering a cryptic comment that would somehow perfectly encapsulate her current dilemma. They started new traditions. Movie nights in Arthur's living room, with Sarah reading him subtitles. Daily walks to the park, Sarah pushing his wheelchair, listening to his observations about the changing seasons. Holidays, once lonely for both of them, were now filled with shared meals, laughter, and the comfortable chaos of chosen family. Margaret would visit frequently, no longer a distant relative, but a welcome aunt, amazed at the profound transformation. In her brother and his new, vibrant companion, Sarah realized that the family she had longed for wasn't a static concept, defined by blood or geography. It was a dynamic, living entity built on shared moments, mutual respect, and the unconditional love that emerges from unexpected places. Arthur, the grumpy old man from downstairs, had become the anchor she never knew she needed, grounding her. In a city that once felt overwhelming, he didn't fill the void left by her own family's distance. He created a whole new, beautiful space in her heart. Their story became a quiet legend in their building. Neighbors, who once saw them as just two individuals, now saw them as an inseparable pair, a testament to the power of human connection. Strangers who once passed them by without a glance now offered smiles, seeing the undeniable warmth emanating from their bond. This is the beauty of life, isn't it? That sometimes, when you're at your lowliest, when you've given up on finding that deep connection, it finds you. It finds you in the most unlikely person, in the most inconvenient moment, and it teaches you that family isn't about fitting into a preconceived notion. It's about fitting into each other's lives, supporting each other's vulnerabilities, and choosing every single day to be there. Arthur and Sarah's story reminds us that kindness isn't just about grand gestures. It's about the small, consistent acts of consideration. It's about opening a door, offering a hand, or simply listening. And from those seemingly insignificant moments, the most profound and unexpected bonds can form, turning complete strangers into the truest, most cherished family. If Arthur and Sarah's incredible journey from strangers to family resonated with you, if it touched your heart and reminded you of the power of unexpected connections, please take a moment to like this video. Your likes help us share these powerful stories with more people around the world. And if you're moved by tales of human connection and resilience, be sure to subscribe to Heartfelt Chronicles. We bring you true stories of compassion, unexpected bonds, and the extraordinary human spirit every week. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss another journey with us. Have you ever formed an unexpected bond with someone who became like family? Share your heartwarming stories in the comments below. Let's celebrate the diverse forms of family that enrich our lives. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truest family often isn't found. It's built, one heartfelt moment at a time. See you in the next chronicle.